Hello and welcome to the channel. We appreciate you swinging by as we're going to talk a little bit about obsessive compulsive disorder today. It seems to me, as a practicing therapist, that obsessive thinking is something that happens regularly. And I hear a lot of folks outside of my office and during a daily routine discussion talking about how they are OCD. We want to clear up a little bit about this. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a very severe form, or can be a very severe form of mental illness that can feel very debilitating and oftentimes becomes debilitating, and it makes it very hard to function with day-to-day routines. This is different than perfectionism. This is different from being passionate. It's different from also having some OCD traits or tendencies, which I do think many of us have. Obsessive compulsive disorder is characterized by two things that make it different from a general anxiety disorder. The two main contributing factors are obsessive thoughts that are very difficult to control and can oftentimes become debilitating, as well as compulsive behaviors with the hope to reduce the obsessive thought and even provide some emotional relief. So let's talk about some OCD things for just a moment. First and foremost, I found it interesting to note that our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual says that obsessive compulsive disorder affects roughly 1 to 2% of the population on any given 12-month period. That was surprisingly low to me, considering I think how often we hear I'm so OCD in our daily lives, whether it's with coworkers or social media or even family members. I think the piece that gets taken out of context is the compulsion part of that disorder. OCD, based on what the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual says, part of the requirement for that is that the compulsive behavior needs to have a direct impact on your life, frequently in the form of time consumption, and they offer the suggestion of about an hour. So if you think about it, if you're going through your daily routine and the home is messy, the question I would ask is, do you have the ability to walk out the door while the house is still a mess, or do you have to stop and clean it up? The stopping and cleaning it up would have to get in the way of other things, which would look something like getting to work late, arriving late when dropping the kids off at school, becoming late to functions, maybe to the point of being written up at work because you were late. Increased stress, which might lead problems to social interactions, losing friendships because of cleaning the house, those kinds of things. In very severe cases, that is what OCD does. It becomes so debilitating that our ability to maintain a regular and normal life becomes impossible. And then we do lose jobs and we lose friends. I would suggest that most of us probably don't have OCD to the criteria of OCD, but rather more obsessive traits or tendencies and, perhaps ways that we like things. And we'll talk about some of that in just a minute. So keep in mind that obsessive compulsive disorder is characterized by two main things: obsessive thoughts. I should also indicate that this could include images as well that pop up into your mind, and then the compulsive behavior that we try and do in order to decrease the stress that we feel because of those thoughts or those feelings that come up. There are a couple of areas in which, or themes I think is maybe a better word, where OCD seems to be regularly common. One of those areas is symmetry. Lots of us, and I have some tendencies for this, lots of us like things to be presented in a certain way. We like, perhaps when we go grocery shopping, we like to stack the cans in the pantry so that the label is facing a certain direction. Organization is a form of symmetry, where we might have our pen or our pencil drawer. One thing that I know that I do is my closet is generally color-coded based on the type of shirt. Today I'm wearing a button-down shirt, and my buttons are color-coded, but I also have collared shirts that are color-coded and coordinated. And so the question would be, can I leave and function with them being out of order? And the answer to that is yes. Anyways, symmetry is one area that is a common theme with obsessive compulsive disorder. Another area might be contamination. This is probably the one we hear about the most frequently. This would be things like hand washing or frequent showering. This is very different from being hygienic and wanting to be clean. We joke here at Healing Connections Counseling that oftentimes I go to the restroom between every session, and the reality of it is oftentimes I do that to wash my hands between sessions. Now, can I avoid doing that and perform a session functionally without going and washing my hands? And the answer to that is also yes. But oftentimes OCD can show up in the form of contamination and a need to be clean, whether it's ourselves or cleaning our surroundings. Another area of OCD would be some type of harm or focus on safety. This is where we see things like frequently checking doors, making sure that locks are taken care of, maybe your car door if you park the car outside, shutting the garage door to make sure everything is safe. I recall one time working with a client who would strategically make an effort after checking his home to make sure that the doors were locked, that he would make sure not to shut lights off and lock doors at the same time, in the event that other people were watching that shutting off lights and going to bed would occur at the same time. And it became a very intrusive pattern for him that interrupted his ability to sleep. So safety is another area of concern with obsessive compulsive disorder. Perhaps the last area worth mentioning on this episode is that there are sometimes an unapproval worry or an unapproval section of obsessive compulsive disorder. Oftentimes this looks like something like religiosity, or can look something like perfectionism, where I have to do certain things in certain ways. For lots of folks, unfortunately, these might be intrusive thoughts that are even sexual in nature. And when those thoughts occur, there's a feeling of being a bad person or being unworthy. And this can become very debilitating as well. Obsessive compulsive disorder can be a very debilitating mental health condition. Again, I think a good measure would be if I'm having some of these urges or images or even thoughts, am I able to resist doing a compulsive behavior to reduce the anxiety? If the answer is yes, you might have a more type A personality. If the answer is no, and you're seeing that it starts to affect your occupational functioning or your social life, it might be worth considering some mental health treatment, which could also include medication. There are studies that indicate that medication is helpful for obsessive compulsive disorder. Anyways, I appreciate you swinging by. Thanks for joining us on this episode, and I hope that there was something that was helpful during the OCD podcast that was helpful for you. Thanks very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.